Hello, welcome back to the Three Takes on AI podcast and webcast. Listen or watch as Mike, Campbell, and Brian discuss the AI bubble. Are AI investments in progress ready to burst? Are we looking for signs about adoption or a meta moment that will impact markets? Or is it possible AI is still in an early adopter mode and the winners and losers are yet to be predicted? Listen, watch, and please register to hear about future broadcasts and comment on your take on AI at 3takesonai.com.
And it's Friday in New England, and things are getting very cold, and it's affecting my brain. But today we're going to talk about the AI bubble. Is it going to burst? We've got three different opinions, which is great. I'll kick it off with mine. I do think we're in a bubble. I think we're in a very large bubble. I think this is a repeating pattern in the economy and in technology, and we're being propped up in a lot of different ways. So let me dive into this a little bit. So first of all, the folks who are talking about the bubble, they talk about different parts of AI. So you have to kind of drill into exactly what they're talking about when they say whether we are or not in a bubble, will it burst, will it not? So one aspect is around GPUs, or the graphical processor units. And it's come out recently that an accusation, if you will, that some of the large tech vendors are controlling their financial results in the way that they depreciate their GPUs. So the GPUs have a very short shelf life, especially given how quickly we are improving technology, but they're now being depreciated over 5 years. They don't last 5 years. So that inflates the income, top line revenue for several of these companies. That, for those of us of a certain age, will feel very Enron-esque. Enron, MCI, companies like that, that were devastating when they came down. And I do think that there's a possibility that exists if in fact it's true about the depreciation schedules. But the second and more specific to why I am taking the position that yes, we're in a bubble, yes, it will burst, is that you can only slice a dollar so many ways. There are a immeasurable number of companies that are either in AI or claiming to be in AI, many of whom have done nothing more than automated processes. It's not actually intelligence. It's not an agentic AI. It's not, the AI isn't actually doing anything that makes the job or the function easier, better, improved. Though there are some great ones out there. I can give you two examples. One is the way SiriusXM is using their chatbot. So when I called them a couple of months ago with a billing issue, 8 o'clock on a Sunday morning, I was like, "Hi, I'm Mary. I'm an AI agent. I speak in full sentences." And in 4 minutes, literally 4 minutes, I was off the phone with my billing problem solved perfectly. Could not have been happier. No supervisors involved, no runaround, no nothing. And the other is a solution called Boardy, Boardy, that is an agentic solution for basically replaces BDR, the cold outreach. And it's for me served up several great contacts. So there are use cases out there where it works really, really well. But back to my point, there are many companies out there that that aren't actually AI. They're great automation, but that's confusing. And perhaps the biggest sign that I think that this is a very risky situation, house of cards, is that I am struggling to find a company that has said our recruiting and retention of employees has improved, is better than it's ever been because of it, thanks to AI. Not seeing that. In the world that we live in, sales and marketing, I am not seeing or have not heard of a company that is saying We now have 80% of our reps, 90% of our reps making quota. Our close rates have gone from 18% to 25%, heading to 30 and 35%. So if I'm a CFO and somebody's bringing me a proposal for AI, my first question is, where's the business improving and by how much? Not how many heads is it taking out, because I'm not sure that that's a long-term play. But how is the business going to improve? And once those questions start getting asked, we've seen this over and over and over again. Again, those of us of a certain age, been through 5 recessions now. This is when it all comes down. When the financial folks say, I'm not giving you money for this because I don't believe that it works. So pause on that. Turn it over to you guys.
All right. I know my position. I truly believe that we are in a bubble, but if I'm looking at it from, again, the business and strategic intent of organizations, my question really comes down to the resilience of that bubble. And will it pop or will it fizzle? It becomes the question, because I reflect on, obviously, the housing bubble that occurred in the 2000s. I reflect on the dot-com bubble. Obviously, people are talking about that. There was some major differences. This one, you have major investment being put into physical infrastructure, data centers, power utility companies, et cetera. And even if the bubble bursts, those become depreciable assets for an organization. They may go dark. You may have dark data centers, but there will be a transition period into something else. But I always have a sort of a pessimistic view of even being in the brightest of times, wearing my shades because the future's so bright. You got to wear shades type thing.
That's very Canadian, by the way, Campbell.
That's true. We are in a revolution. We are in a transformative stage. There's factors about, that I'm constantly telling clients that I'm talking with, don't chase the FOMO. Don't focus on the hype. I think, as we spoke in the last podcast about just the success ratio, the organizations that are succeeding are the ones that have the deep vertical integration of AI going into their stacks. And I think that is critical. I think the other factor that's different from the other bubbles is that because AI to a certain degree is so intimate to us. I mean, we're all familiar with ChatGPT. We're all familiar with what it can do. We can see the possibilities and also the concerns that we would have from it personally. And so having that pitched as a business model is something that people are maniacally focused on. I think one of the concerns I have is that Silicon Valley is focused solely on AGI, artificial general intelligence, which is, the nirvana of what AI is supposed to be. I don't think that is necessarily the end goal. I think that if they think they're going to get to AGI and it doesn't become apparent by 26, 27, then things are going to collapse and pop and burst. But I think most organizations are going to be taking a practical approach to this, to say, to your point, like Sirius and other organizations, where can I use it effectively? What is the use case? What is the business problem? Let's be realistic about it. But also, which I'll touch on when I give Brian a chance to talk, what is the exit strategy? What if it all goes south and it bursts? What do we do? And that touches on something called the metaverse moment, but I'll get back to that.
So my take on it is totally different. I don't think we're at a bubble at all. Actually, I think where we're mistaken is, if you look at things like the Gartner hype cycle, I think that we're not as far along in this progress as everyone thinks. Number one, we don't have the infrastructure yet built out. Number two, the top AI companies that you see in market have other than OpenAI and Anthropic, probably have multiple revenue and profit streams that they can fuel this with, and they need the data centers for their cloud business or whatever it may be also. Where I think we are compared to the internet is we're at a browser moment, and that is ChatGPT created an access point into AI that we hadn't seen before. The internet wasn't new. It was an intergovernment, interuniversity network. It was really HTML in the browser that took it off. And we're also in a position that AI is not new. So what we are is we're focused on one aspect of AI being generative AI. We're focused on a we have a perspective in the technology industry that I think we're sharing on this call, that we talk to people that we know that already know what this is. I talked to a good friend of mine in the last few days, and what he thinks AI is, or where he sees it, is at what the response is now from Google into search. So we don't have the mass adoption yet in the market. And then the other thing is we don't have mass business adoption. What we have is mass large companies trying to do something, but we may have a smaller company. We're a smaller company using ChatGPT to write our announcements or to update our website. But that core business use cases that were around in the dot-com burst, whether it was e-commerce, those things were impacting, those caused hype because there were a lot of new companies that arrived that people started to adopt. And I don't think we've hit that. And then the last thing I'll say is what we need really to bring this back to ground without a bubble is we need an app server moment where there becomes a standard infrastructure technology that can be deployed, whether you're a large company or a small one. And then I have one last comment, and that is it's much cheaper to deploy an AI solution today beyond the learning and training than it was on the internet. You don't have to deploy a server, you don't have to deploy a net, you have to worry about network connectivity probably, but maybe not as much. And so the ability for the market to adopt and then deploy AI solutions when they do come to market, Mike, to your point, when they start to recognize real value, there is real value. We talked about it in the last podcast, but I think the real value still is at the assistant, if you will, the browser levels. I think we're earlier in market than people will admit. And Campbell, my last comment, I think you're right. We need to stop talking about AI in human terms. We need to create an AI vocabulary so that the world understands what it really is, what it's not, that there are different types of AI, just as there are different types of computing technology otherwise. And so I just think we're much earlier in the process than, and I think, and truthfully, NVIDIA is creating, there may be a bubble around NVIDIA in particular, and that there's no competition, and I think competition will arrive. But I don't think AI in general is going to suffer a bubble at all.
So I'm gonna both agree and disagree with you guys. Not a big surprise, right? And I think there's a very important point here, the subtext. So by the way, so I'm a fan of history, and I do believe that history is the best predictor of the future. And right now I'm reading the book 1929 by Aaron Sorkin. I highly suggest that anybody in business pick this book up, download it on your Kindle, whatever, and read it, because we are in a mirror image of 1928, 1929. Setting that aside, I do believe that a fundamental issue that we have right now, which also leads to the bubble burst, is this is a new economy. We are building a new railroad, if you will, which we've seen one other time, and that was the internet, right? So go back 35 years. But we're building a new railroad. We don't understand what that actually means to the economy. We have an idea, but we're seeing lots and lots and lots of layoffs, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people being laid off, with the question looming, well, what are these people going to do? We don't know. We don't have an answer to that yet. We are seeing lots of investment in these businesses without necessarily seeing what the financial outcome will be for those investments. And unless those investments pay off in a measure that is return on value, then you'll see the investments dry up very quickly. And again, and by the way, I appreciate Campbell, your point about, will it pop or will it fizzle? We've never seen a fizzle that I can think of. It's always, even if you look back again, I'll go back to 1929. There were a series of small pops in the year leading up to the crash of October 1929. And then it just burst. And it burst because of the measures that people were using, and then the fear that was created by the loss of money. And there was a whole lot of unregulated, unrestrained investing in in people who, and this is the last thing I'll say, and then I'll pause. People had no understanding of what it was that they were investing their money in, but they were being told, you're going to make thousands to millions of dollars. So you started to get stock tips from the guy working the elevator. And that's what we're seeing in AI right now, is these people who are like, oh, this is like, it's either the greatest thing to ever happen or the worst thing to ever happen, but they don't actually understand it, but they're willing to put their money into it.
Yeah.
So I have one quick comment. Maybe this isn't the internet, it's mobile. Because you had Nokia leading the charge, right?
Okay.
And Microsoft bought Nokia and it died. I mean, the mobile business, if you will, went from a texting and very small device to the launch of different kinds of intelligent devices in Europe in particular, that have now turned into basically two platforms, right, that have created a standard. It's sort of, your comment around trains is good. It didn't work until the tracks actually standardized, right?
Yeah.
And so I think maybe it's more of a mobile and a cloud moment, because what's different than 1929, like it or not, is we have access to more information. We also have access to more bad information. But I think we're in a position here where AI is not new. Generative AI is the new generation, if you will, and agentic and AGI coming. But I mean, I think there's certainly issues. I think we could discuss the political side of this. The only thing I would suggest is, Campbell, we've got about 2 minutes. So if you want to add I know you had a meta moment, if you will, and want to discuss it, and then like you could wrap it up.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think just quickly reflect on this. You used the railroad analogy. Actually, if you look at the numbers, the amount of money being invested into AI related industries right now is this on par with the investments that were made into the railroad infrastructure when it first initiated in America, which means that everybody's backing it. Expectations are high. So I think, again, to Brian, to your point, the infrastructure hasn't necessarily been built out yet. So this maybe gives us a little bit of a long runway. The other thing I wanted to touch on was that, yeah, whatever happens, if it pops, and to your point, Mike, I mean, if it pops, it pops. There will be victims, but there will people that will succeed. AI will continue. It's not going to disappear. So companies, when I'm talking to them in regards to, governance and strategy and, risk mitigation, what is the exit strategy? And one thing I'm sort of want to make sure that people understand is it's this term called the metaverse moment. And so you need to, as a company, be tracking, that moment. And that moment is basically when innovation is announced from the major players, Google, Meta, Microsoft, and you see their stock prices start to drop, even though they announce innovation, but you start to see drop. That's the first indication of people's lack of confidence in moving forward. So how do companies track that, plan for it? What is the exit strategy if things go south? Again, that comes back to governance and, privacy, risk, data quality, all the fundamentals. If you have the fundamentals in place, no matter what happens, if you have to change LLM models, et cetera, or providers, your SLA agreements, that's all taken care of. So again, we're just wrapping up to say, don't get focused on the FOMO, have an exit strategy.
And I think that the things to start looking for, watching for, are what I'll call run-on assets. So when you start seeing some of these smaller or startups fold or selling out to medium to large businesses, that's a pretty good sign. And then just watch for the slowing. This is where LinkedIn is still useful when you start seeing people posting about slowing of sales and further layoffs, specifically in the AI space. With the reverse being, if you start seeing people posting about their businesses at 80%, hey, my sales teams are 80% of quota instead of 57% or 62%. And you start seeing close rates going up, which says that the AI is actually helping people to do their job better, perform the function. That will be the game changer, and we're simply not seeing it, including at the majors like HubSpot and Salesforce. So,
All right. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, Mike and Campbell.
thank you.
Thank you.